So good evening, everybody. For those of you who have been with us before, thank you for joining us again. For those who are here for the first time, we hope you find this as interesting as we think it is, and hope of capturing the history of electronic music in Malta. Small steps, but we'll get there in the end. So, as Edwin said, Elektronika is a project which was launched last February with the aim of compiling a historiography of electronic music in Malta. Earlier this summer, it entered a new phase of data gathering via these oral history sessions. The first two sessions, focusing on the evolution and exploration of electronic music in Malta, were held in July and August. And tonight's third session will focus on promotion and its impact on the local scene, its role in giving homegrown events an international aspect and putting them on the international calendar in some cases, plus the support that was provided by radio coverage and presence and is still giving support. Joining me for tonight's session are three personalities who, apart from being DJs, have been also active in promotion on the local scene, I say because two of them have been actually presenting radio shows. Adrian has not been on the radio from the 90s onwards. And I'll just introduce them: Junior B, Adrian V, and Bryan S. I'll stick to Michael Bugeja. I'm not going by B, just for your case. So otherwise we'll have confusion, I suppose. But so at the end of the session, as Edwin explained, Junior B will be performing a DJ set. Elektronika is managed by Electronic Music Malta together with the M3P Foundation and is supported by Arts Council Malta. This event is part of the Spazju Kreattiv Programme. So I'm going to start with Bryan S., who is the one who started first out of the three guests tonight in venturing into the world of DJing. First of all, Bryan, perhaps a small, short intro into what got you into music, early influences perhaps of music before you stepped into DJing.
It all started when I was young. I mean, since the age of 5, I think, or 4, I was into music. At that time, listening to the cable radio, no FM stations at the time. I mean, any kind of music.
Whatever was playing.
Whatever was playing. We had no choice.
Yeah, that's true.
Not even cassettes at that time. So then the cassette era came in, and that's how it started, like recording music from the radio, and then playing for small audiences. I mean,
using cassettes.
Using cassettes, yes.
Right. Okay, so rather more primitive than.
No beat matching.
No,
I mean,
that would have been something. Beat matching on cassette. Well, I'm sure it can be done somehow. But
there were some which had pitch control, but believe me,
that wasn't so precise. But early musical influences, were you always drawn to the music that was more on the dance side, or was it a gradual shift?
It was a gradual shift. I mean, when I was young, still in primary school, I was more into rock music. I mean,
as all of us were, I suppose.
And then the punk era came in. So, and eventually I started following this music in the early 80s with Depeche Mode. I mean, I'm still a fan of Depeche Mode now, and that's how it all began.
All right, so that's how you got into electronic music?
Yeah, electronic
basically.
music. I mean, Depeche Mode, Kraftwerk.
Okay, and the like. And obviously you started DJing in the mid-80s. So I assume all this music that you were consuming via the radio eventually became available on vinyls back in the day as well, and you could start to DJ then?
No, the early 80s were still on cassettes.
No, mid-80s, when you started DJing then?
No, but still even in the mid-80s, I was still
with, using cassettes,
yes,
all
I
right.
mean, you couldn't find the techniques.
So when did you actually step into DJing once the vinyl? My
first club was in club residence was 1990. It was in Cospicua or not? No, not Birgo.
Emotions.
Birgo.
Emotions.
Emotions too.
Too, yeah. All right. I've been there once.
It's not a nice place to be.
Mela. So that was your first taste of DJing, but obviously it was something that kept you in the business, so to speak, in that line of work as well, because you had been DJing for many years after that. So
yes, definitely.
By way of DJing, did you get into also maybe tempted to produce your own music?
I have been pushed by, I was signed to a German record label, Plastic City, but I was pushed to do something, but eventually all I did, a couple.
And this was the 90s as well, no?
Yes, 96, 95, something like that.
Okay. And apart from DJing locally, I'm sure you had some international experiences as well.
Yes, I played in Germany. All these came thanks to Plastic City Records, which I had been signed for. And I played in Ingolstadt, Germany, Cave Club. That was my very first appearance. And then I had the most impressive one for me was when playing at Pepsi Ziget in Love Barricade in Hungary with 40,000 Panthers. And there were Prodigy Live. It was a real festival, and that was 1996.
Right, that was the biggest, obviously, place.
Yeah,
I mean, you can,
the climax.
coming from Malta, probably couldn't get any bigger than that at the time, for sure. Anyway. So that was obviously something that remains memorable to you. But perhaps one of the more important, not that the DJing wasn't important, but one of the more important things as well that you got into was hosting a radio show as soon as we had the radio kind of, it was possible to have more than just the national radio station, so to speak, the pluralism of radio stations. So, and you stepped in almost immediately, so to speak.
Yes.
No, but with your own show, but it was called?
The first one, it was called Hip Hop. It was 1991. It was the first dance, electronic dance.
So you didn't stick just to hip hop, but you just started...
No, because hip hop was a name given to the show, not by me, but by the station.
All right.
But I did play hip hop too, because...
you had to justify it, basically. So.
In fact, what I did was the first hour was hip hop, and then electronic dance music, which was anything from Belgian techno to acid.
And at the time that you started this radio show, I think this was 1991. We're talking,
91.
I think, a few days more, and it will be 30 years ago.
28 September.
Exactly. So
was the opening, and I had my first show on the 28th.
So as you said, content-wise, you are going into techno in the second part. We'll focus on that and leave the hip-hop behind for now. The scene at the time, locally, was techno already on the rise back then when you were starting the show? Or did you see perhaps you were introducing something or helping to introduce something into the local scene?
I could say that I introduced techno to Malta. I mean,
through the show?
Yeah, through this show, and I was also playing at the different parties and even some clubs.
And eventually you moved on to other radio stations as well?
Yes.
Where you had other shows?
I played at, I had shows on 1066, A3 FM, Radio Tal-Università.
And always focusing on techno or in other kinds of music?
Mostly techno, but I did play other electronic dance.
So looking back now on all those years of broadcasting and especially focusing perhaps more on techno than anything else, how important was it for radio at the time to be actually giving the space for electronic music, which I'm sure during the daytime was not being given the space, so it had to be these niche programs? Yes,
the first show was, I think, from 8 to 10 in the evening. This was something new to the airwaves, so I must thank the radio that they believed in me. Otherwise, it all started on a small scale, but it went boom.
It went bigger.
Bigger and
Obviously,
bigger
the
and
radio
bigger.
stations we're talking about were all national.
Yes,
so
yes.
At least the audience was quite wide as well.
Yes,
But then again, the fact that perhaps techno at the time, let's say at the start of the 90s, it was still emerging. Obviously, the audience was still small and grew with you, I would say. And I'm going to switch over to Adrian and Junior B actually at this stage. I know Junior B you also hosted your own radio shows, but at the time that Bryan was broadcasting, were you following this at the time? Were you aware of what was going on?
Personally, yes, definitely. What I must say is that I was influenced by my family members. First of all, my father used to buy vinyls, and we used to have a JVC turntable back late in the 80s. He used to buy records of Kraftwerk, Depeche Mode, the Beatles. So I must say that my father was my first influencer. But then obviously my late brother was the biggest influence on me. As many know already, he was one of the first promoters in Malta. He started doing and organizing events back in the early 90s with Massimo Lovegrove. They used to have a promotion called MMF. We're talking about 1993, 92, 93. And obviously I was influenced by that. And my late brother used to bring cassettes, cassettes. And that was my first love with electronic music at the early 90s. Personally, I experienced turntables at Megatech in Guardamanja. We're talking about circa 1994. This was a record shop selling vinyls and equipment, hi-fi equipment, back in those days. It was run by Silvio and Louis, his name was Louis, and Guardamanja. And then there where I saw this pair of techniques in the middle of this shop, and then I started experiment. But Bryan was already started doing his radio show, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Mid-90s, as we say.
91 he started.
91, exactly, but on Radio 101.
91.
Visual already on Radio
The
101.
first.
Yeah, so as a kid, I started going parties in 1994, listening to Bryan, buying records, by sending faxes or calling back in those days. Sometimes even my late brother used to go abroad because he used to have a business, and I used to tell him, please buy this from me. I used to give him A4 paper full of records. And but I used to follow
A4 paper, you were pushing it, A4 paper.
Yes, a lot. Sometimes he used to buy for me, sometimes not. It depends how busy he was.
It was a little bit expensive at that time.
Yeah, of course it was, of course.
Right. But switching to Adrian now. Adrian, same question. You were following these programs by Bryan at the time, and obviously they had an impact, because I remember you as a small boy getting interested in DJing.
I'm still small.
That was when, not anymore, but
Physically, exactly.
he was very young at the time. I still remember you having a very huge interest in music, and the next time that I saw you, you were actually behind the decks going for it. So from somebody as a child watching somebody else.
Exactly.
For me, it was like, looking back now, it's a bit of a privilege that he was watching me, but I don't know. It wasn't that much to learn from, but anyway.
You are my idol.
Again, impact of radio, those radio shows, how important were they to you at the time as an emerging DJ, and also to expose you to what else was going on out there, and this would eventually lead to those shopping lists that Junior B just mentioned, of trying to get somebody, whoever is going abroad, coming back with some records for your collection.
Exactly. Yes, I started listening to the radio, but at that time I was playing mostly garage and house when I was young, when I started, and then I switched to techno. A friend of mine gave me 2 vinyls. He told me, I have this style, listen to it, it's very good. And when I started playing techno, I started experimenting with techno. I felt that I'm much more in tune, because I like swift techniques in DJing style. So I said, this is my style. And then obviously I was listening to Bryan, and then I was going to the parties and
Getting to know all the other DJs. Who
exactly, my love grown, and that.
So if you had to, very briefly, the scene at the time when you started taking an interest, what were the major, perhaps, events or venues that were really pushing this style?
Techno, you mean?
Techno in particular, yes.
Yes, apart the radio, we had some.
Mirage was
Exactly,
already
but
open.
before Mirage, I'm
Before
saying.
Mirage, Pushka, but definitely
Pushka, Sunday afternoon, we started from there. Generator with David D. I played there for the first time because when we did the basic course, and then when we passed, he gave us 1 hour playing in a very huge club, so that was something very, very, you remember it as well, even you.
I think we've actually discussed this as well in the first session when David D was here and he was explaining the whole routine. But it's quite good to go over it again because obviously there are different people tonight.
But at that time I was still playing garage and house because I used to be a lot with David, and that style I like it and I still like it. I was going to small parties like Selmoon. Obviously at that time we had a lot of, how do you say, I mean, not allowed parties.
Oh, illegal parties.
Illegal parties, exactly. So, and then from Pushka we started Mirage, there were Glamours every Saturday, and
so obviously over time the number of events and promoters grew as well. We'll be talking about that in a short while. But while we're on the subject as well before of radio with Bryan, Junior B, you were also hosting a show eventually. I don't know what year you started.
But I started hosting a show early 2000, 2001 on Test 66.
So by that time I imagine that there were other shows pushing electronic music on the radio?
Yes.
There might have been, no?
In fact, even Bryan was on 1066 during that period. I used to host a program on Saturday evening with Alfie Fabri, who was like the station manager, but Bryan used to run on Sunday. It was your Sunday. Yeah, for 7 years. I've broadcast for 7 years with 1066.
And you focused on a particular style again?
I used to focus more on like techno and electro sounds, basically more electro, because personally I was more into hard techno back in the 90s. But then, early 2000, I was experimenting more on electro sounds personally. And then by the time I changed
it was a growing genre.
Yes,
as
it
well
was
at
a
the time
style. I
as well.
think electro was growing a lot during, even electro crash during that period. I must say that Dave Clark, he did this electro boogie mix, which was 100% electro sound, and I think that mix really influenced many artists and producers. In fact, we were experiencing many techno producers experimenting again with these sounds. And personally, I was performing on that style. I was like promoting these electro sounds on this radio show. It used to call, its name was Electronic Theory. And then I used to have my personal promotion with the same name, Electronic Theory, which I've started back in 2004 it was. And during that period with Malcolm Galdes, he used to run even fact promotion. During that period, we used to even bring in, electro international artists to promote like this.
Right. So while you were doing the radio show as well, at some point, I'm going back to now the element of promotion, the aspect of promotion, where obviously all of you have had some experience, been involved to quite an extent in promotions yourselves. You mentioned earlier your late brother Desmond was obviously one of the inspirations, I think pioneers, exactly. I think along with Carl Kutayer as well.
Carl Kutayer,
yes, but eventually they were taking the promotions to another level.
To another level.
So your involvement in promotions per se, up to what level did you get involved, and how important was it that such a promotion such as Exit, for example, was to the growth of not only the scene, but also to the audiences that then started to get drawn to the events, because as we all know, the events that Exit was organizing grew bigger and bigger.
Exactly. First of all, we were a team, not only my brother or Silvio, who was his partner, or myself. We were a group of team helping each other, and Exit Promotion started back in 1995. And it started because my late brother, Desmond, he had this fashion area in a fashion shop, a small area in Guardamanja and Megatech, the name that I mentioned earlier. And this shop name was Ultimate. But then my brother and Silvio decided to go to Valletta, and there they opened a new shop, and its name was Exit, which was opened in Savoy Arcades, Republic Street, Valletta. This was like a new arcade. Before it used to be as a cinema, and they decided to open there this new shop, which was they used to sell vinyls and clothes. By time, it was 100% based on fashion, but during this period, they decided to start this promotion, Exit Promotion. And I must say, Exit Promotion was one of the most influential promotions back then in Malta. Immediately they started booking top international artists.
So from the get-go, the intention was, the aim was to actually get international artists to Malta.
Yes. My brother's theory was like mixing fashion with music. He used to promote his business through music and vice versa.
But the fact that there was an international element at the time, I think it was very crucial to bringing it to the attention of a bigger audience as well.
I must say that it wasn't only Exit Promotion, because there was even Joseph Felice with Sonic Mecca. He used to book even top international DJs, because before we used to experience, even in Patchville, international DJs, but back in the mid-90s, I think we were experiencing big names. And like Exit, Sonic Mecca, then there was even Love Sexy. I think these first promoters, and even Love Grove Promotions, these were the guys who started bringing top names to Malta, and then our scene was experiencing these performances. Obviously, back then wasn't that common that people take a flight and going to a festival, because it used to be very expensive. Not like today, using like low-cost airlines, and sometimes it's cheaper going to festivals abroad rather than staying here. But it's a different world, and so for the crowd, I think it was very important to start bringing these names, and I think it was very influential, so that our scene was then growing by time.
So I'll turn back to Bryan now, because we mentioned genetics a moment ago, and perhaps your view now, in hindsight, of the role that genetics played as well. Carl Kutayar, who was also, well, basically, again, maybe he was the brain behind it all, but there was a team.
Yes, definitely. It all started by Carl himself. I must say I came in later, because he did already 2 parties before, or 3, a couple, let's say a couple. At the time, I didn't know him.
And how much later was genetics after Exit?
98 maybe, Carl?
René?
98?
94? 99?
Late 90s. Genetics started.
98 they started small gigs, but then on the 98 they started bringing the big guys from Germany.
The international names.
And I think it's
Thank you, René.
about genetics. It was after Exit stopped from selling records. Genetics then opened and started selling these vinyls in Bugeja. So first it was a record shop, which was a very good record shop. We used to bring good amount of vinyls. Even myself, I used to buy from here a lot.
I think most DJs used to go and buy.
Yes, because
yes. We used to meet there.
It was like the gold mine of
having a
vinyl.
coffee.
because during that period, social media was zero.
Exactly.
So,
And you had the opportunity to listen and...
Exactly, we had that opportunity, because before, talking about myself, I used to read magazines, like, I don't know, Mixmag, DJ magazine. I used to check the top 10, top 20, and okay, so Dave Clark, okay, so let's check it out. it wasn't that possible to listen to it. Sometimes I used to call some record shops. Obviously, my father, it's expensive.
Playing it over the phone?
Yes, please, can I used to have, but it wasn't that easy during that time to buy a record. So I think genetics played a big role back in the late 90s.
I must say that my show was very popular. It was because of that. I mean, there weren't any record shops at that time, 91. So what I did is I had some friends in the UK which had a record shop, what's called Zoom Records.
So you got to be the guy playing the records for the people to then order them, basically.
So what I used to do is they used to send me the fax each, it was every Thursday, like 40 pages. And then you don't know which is which, but then I'll tick them and I'll phone them and they
send you the records.
The fact that we live on an island back then, it was very challenging. I mean, obviously, it was a different situation, definitely.
Even when I was importing these, there were times when I even had problems, like the customs used to tell me, oh, these records are for SIM parties. You're not going to get them. How? Why? I mean, it's a record.
Yeah, there was that taboo, I suppose, with those parties.
Of course.
We had some problems.
At the time as well.
I mean, as a DJ, we had some problems with the police back then. We used to get arrested because we played. Because
I got arrested, in fact, once.
In their minds, it was like
You were arrested?
yeah, quite a few
I
times.
never was, sorry.
The perception was, you're a DJ, you're a drug dealer. So even I used to DJ like every night at Tigulio. It was 94, 95, something like that. And I used to get a search every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. And each time they see the record case, the police will start to scream, he's a DJ, get out of the car. I mean, it was like that. But then eventually
Things starting to kind of, they got used to the culture, I think.
Personally, I experienced a similar situation. During a Tribu festival, it was organized in Ta'ali, if I'm not mistaken, 2002, 2003, I don't know. And we used to do a caravan behind the main stage. A condition so that the DJs will stay there talking.
Like a green room.
Like a green room, like, yeah. And I do remember it was my time to perform.
As well, yeah.
It was my time to perform. I had my records there in this air-conditioned caravan because of the high temperatures, and so that the vinyls was there. And I just went out, and I heard this guy shouting, "Stop there, stop there, stop there." What the hell? And I saw these police guys jumping from the trees and to do me just a search. And we went into the caravan. They checked one by one all my vinyls and my jeans and everything. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Not what you need before playing a song.
Exactly. I was already like, there's, I don't know, 6,000 people. I was already full of anxiety. And then seeing these police jumping on you.
Obviously. Moving to Adrian, you also set up a promotion, an agency as well.
Exactly.
Fused, right?
Fused.
Did that start as a school first and then an agency?
Yes,
or?
I started as a DJing school at home first, and then I used to teach with Malcolm, in fact, in Army, the one Bryan mentioned.
And then place you at fair.
Exactly. And then I decided to open my new shop, my shop. And I opened Fuse DJing in Army. It was DJing school, DJ equipment, DJ magazine, vinyls. We had production courses as well with Edwin and Frank, Duo Blanc. It was very nice. That time was the DJing was something special. We still had CDs, vinyls, magazines, so it was, like, and the meeting point, I had a small bar as well, so it was very nice.
It was like a hangout.
Exactly, and then I started obviously doing small parties, just locally. Then I met two guys, Jamie and Andrew, and we started bringing international DJs as well. And obviously, our promotion grew. It was very good as well that time.
So by the time that you got into the promotions, it became a bit of a norm that the events should always have an international presence.
Yes.
Well. So
we did some local parties as well,
of course,
in between. But obviously, when you at that time when you say, you know, Dave Clark, Jeff Mills, Sven Veit, Richard Horton, I mean, you can get a lot of people.
Of course, it's huge.
And it was exactly.
And I think that was a golden time for it, because I think that the audiences at the time were quite huge.
Because I think the thing is that back in the 90s, it was more based on like big festivals and big parties. But then I think late 90s, early 2000s, we start experiencing different crowds.
Exactly.
Like Liquids started before, but then
it's like they separated, you know, like
each DJ has his own
techno house,
crowd,
you know.
And I think back in the late 90s, early 2000, then a new promoter started having like small nights, especially in what's the name of that outlet in Bahar Chaq? Strings, like Disorder, Cubic, Squadron.
But obviously those were smaller because the place
Smaller,
is also
like
more intimate.
For a small crowd, like 200, 300 people.
300 in there?
Yeah, they were really underground. I used to like them a lot, this type of
Very
guys.
sweaty.
And even for us to perform, it was more easy to experiment. Personally, even today, I still prefer to perform for 300 people rather than thousands, to tell you the truth. And I think it was a nice period.
So all throughout all of this, all of these experiences that you went through, you still felt that need to introduce something different, something new, keep up with what's going on, obviously.
I mean, in the 90s, it was a must to organize events in a professional way, I think. It was a must then to have international artists. And I think it was time to have even these local nights, even promoting local new talents, because that was their aim. So I think, these steps helped our local scene by time, I think. These eras helped.
Right. As regards promotion, once again, I think in all different cases, in all three cases, obviously we mentioned these three, but there were plenty more promoters organizing. It was like, up to a certain extent, there must have been some rivalry as well, obviously.
Yes, definitely.
So you're trying to outdo the other one?
I still remember back in the 90s between Love Sexy and Tribute. It was childish. When you look back, it was really childish. I mean, we were kids. My late brother was only 5 years older than me. I mean, when he started, he was, 20-year-old guy, 21. So we were kids. We were really kids. Myself, I was only 16 when I started performing in 1995. So there was a bit competition, there was. But I think in a way it was positive too, because thanks to competition, they used to book the best.
Well, obviously the audiences were getting the best of it because you're all
best
trying to get the
venue,
biggest stars.
best everything, you know, best
And
music.
from parties, then they went to festivals, both
Exactly.
Love Sexy and Tribute. So instead of having only one DJ and one international artist, then they used to book a good lineup of artists. And then I must say there was Even Trigger, because Even Trigger was very influential to Massimo Lovegrove, because we mentioned Exit, Love Sexy, Genetics, Sonic Mecca. I think even Lovegrove Promotions was influential too.
And earlier I asked Bryan about his perhaps biggest experience abroad, which was in Hungary, right? That was, I heard you mention Ziget, and I think Ziget is still a festival that still takes place.
Yes, Pepsi Ziget,
So
Pepsi Island,
yes, right.
Love Barricade.
So it was part of the huge,
Yes,
the huge
it was
event.
the third time at that time, but
It was still starting out, right? But they already were booking bands like The Prodigy, so it was already high level.
it was before they released The Fate of the Land, so they were popular, they were in demand, but not as much as after.
Well, Fate of the Land just made them rock stars, but it was the The album before that, the one that had Voodoo People.
Music for the Jilted Generation.
Jilted Generation, yes, right. Right. So in your case, let me start with Adrian. Adrian, if I had to ask you the same question, your biggest event that gave you the most satisfaction of being part of, playing alongside perhaps one of your idols?
In Malta or?
Abroad or in Malta, wherever.
In Malta, it was when I played after Jeff Mills. It was the 15th of August. You had a party as well at that time.
I think that was the peak of the competition.
That was the peak, because I was a resident with Love Sexy, and he was a resident with Exit.
On the same day, there was
Exactly.
the Advent Live PA, while Jeff Mills
I was the only one to play in both
the only
parties.
local artist. Both in Gozo, I must say. Both in
I
Gozo,
was actually
Santa
going to
Maria.
ask, was it in gold?
And both full up, ġifieri.
Yeah.
And I played after Jeff Mills. That was the first time he came in Malta. At that time, he was like, superstar, because he just he had that mix. At the Liquid Room, Japan, exactly. So everybody's listening to, and because I like the swift techniques and DJing style, Jeff Mills was something that I would look. And when they told me that I'm playing after him, it was like a shock, and rather than a shock, it was something magical.
By the way, his record box.
His records,
got lost.
exactly. His records did
on
not
that
come. No.
They didn't get come.
Exactly. So he had to play with our records as well. So I met him. We started talking, drink some champagne, and then he started.
Then he had to pick some of your favorites and play them
exactly.
in his set.
And
So
then
screwed
he
you up,
said,
right?
he said, "Can you open the box, please?" I opened the box, and he said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I said, I'm playing after him. I have nothing to play now. But I did something.
I mean, part of it is also the fact that if Jeff Mills is playing, he's like the headlining act, and
Exactly.
you have to go in after him. It's
Of course.
It's a tough call.
And the venue was packed. It was an amazing party. Yeah, amazing party.
I must say, I think personally, I think 1998 was one of the best years.
Exactly. Even
Why?
yes.
Because we started experiencing these big names, but at the same time, I think we faced many challenges during that period.
Yes.
There were some even overdoses. Some people, even Love Sexy, a person
One David
passed away, and
passed away.
there was that bad experience in Pageville when Carl Cox came.
Exactly.
And there was
We have
this
something
rebellion.
here. We have
Yes, we actually
Edwin,
have
you
something.
can-
It's over
you can
there.
show
It's
us-
over there.
this mixer.
Maybe the crowd don't know exactly what happened. There was this event in Dragonara, it was.
Dragonara.
And there was permission problems, and it was overcrowded, and the police came at two. And in fact, Carl Cox was already started.
He was playing.
He was playing. And the police just
Stopped the
stopped
party.
the event, and there was this rebellion, and people were very angry, and the security used to spray even
pepper
the
spray.
pepper spray. So I think 98, it was a very positive year, I think, because
And challenging as well.
But challenging as well, because of these experiences, then new laws applied in October.
Exactly.
Then clubs and events, before we used to perform till 6, 7 in the
8,
evening.
and even 10 in the morning.
So non-stop it was. But because of these bad experiences, then new laws were implemented. And clubs starting closing at 4 o'clock.
At 4.
Laws that are still active.
4 o'clock.
Today.
4 o'clock.
The same.
The soundproofed ones.
Exactly.
The other
Exactly.
ones at 2.
At 2.
two.
The others
the
one
more
at 2,
one.
open air at 2, the one.
And I still remember to have a permission to do an event outside a club. Still it is. It was very challenging, yeah? Because the laws that they implemented were harsh, and it was very, very difficult to organize event outside a club. Why? Because you have to bring an ambulance, you have to bring doctors, nurses, you have to do insurance,
fountains.
you have to do water fountains, depends on the amount of people you have. So So at the same time, as you're saying, I think it was a good year, but at the same time, it started.
Well, obviously, the bigger it gets, the more problems it brings with it.
Because it was getting more commercialized. Then the media was doing programs about it, like the popular program Sharaba, talking about these rave. Yes, we were together. About this rave party.
You have to keep in mind that that whole generation or that movement at the time of electronic music and all this sort of popularity it was attracting was also interpreted perhaps by the state or by the media as kind of rebellion.
Exactly. It was.
So it was like an uprising, no?
This is a bit of a souvenir we have brought with us, and Bryan, maybe you can take it and just show it. We have brought, thanks to Sandro and Etienne, who were like the, suppliers of sound systems at the time. That was actually the mixer that was being used by Carl Cox during this, I would say, event that changed the regulations in Malta. There was this huge riot that Bryan was mentioning, and that mixer actually has a bit of a scar on it. That there's a crack on one of its view there, because the whole DJ booth was overturned, you know, doing.
I'm actually surprised it survived. That's a
survived and kept on being used.
Speakers in the pool, decks in the pool.
But that is the actual mixer of that event. Yes, thanks to Black Box and thanks to Etienne. So.
Because Carl Cox used to play on this one only at that time.
He used to perform on Vexes only.
Exactly.
It was a bad experience, I think. I mean, but then personally, I must say that sorry, if I put it together, but my worst experience was on back in. It was in November 1998, few months after this problems. I was performing. I was going to perform after Holy Ghost during Trigger event, which was held at Jampula. That was the second overdose. And I remember I was going to start performing after Holy Ghost. This group of people, they used to have a cool live performance with drips and stretchers and all these things. And they finished and I was going to start performing after them. After, I don't know, 10 minutes, the police came shouting, "Stop, stop, stop." And I was seeing this guy in front he was overdosed, and in fact he passed away, and the event was stopped immediately.
We must also mention the flight by your
that was back in 1996. But then again, I think that was a business issue. My late brother organized this event in Villa Rosa. It's a hotel in St. George's Bay in Pageville. And there was this business competition between the bar owners and club owners of Pageville vis-a-vis the promoters. Why? Because obviously they were seeing these rave events growing up, and there was an issue there. There was an issue. In fact, the police came and it was stopped at around 1 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken.
I was supposed to play at 2.
1 o'clock.
So I didn't manage to get in.
Today we laugh, but back in the days, these were it was a bit tense.
And even Pushka, we used to go Pushka Sunday afternoon, and as soon as it started, they stopped.
The problem of Pushka was because it's in the middle of...
exactly.
And that was the only setback of that place. Because
and then they did the soundproof system with the glasses, but it's still...
The thing is, once you get kind of targeted, it doesn't matter what you do. The residents around will still find something else to complain about.
But this is not a club. This is why it's special, because it was like a palace.
Yes, but it was being used as a club. So
exactly, so no soundproof, no nothing.
Personally, I still think that it was one of the best clubs we ever had in Malta. I still remember these, I don't know, characters.
Exactly.
Biblical characters in Greek. I do remember that. And this
statues.
And it was a particular one. I think it's...
Another club, I don't know whether you might know, for me the best club was a very small one. It was called The Bone.
The Bone.
It only lasted a few months.
On top of Havana.
Instead of Havana.
All right. Instead of Havana.
Instead of Havana? Came a generator.
Yes, it was Havana because there were
but there was impact. Generator and bone.
both. Because that's where Havana started, up there, then it went also down. I mean, it was, for me, it was the best.
I was a kid. It closed down back in '95. It closed down.
I don't think it lasted that long. Actually.
No, only a few months. We had so many problems because we used to party till 10 in the morning.
It was quite wild. It was quite wild. So again.
But something I had to mention.
Yes, of course. It was part of the history as well. So
it is.
We have to mention it as well. I asked also Bryan earlier about production, so I'm going to ask the same questions to you, Adrian. I know you have done productions over the years. Perhaps a quick word about the production.
Yes, I did some, but the one I released, only one I released on vinyl. It's called 11th Hour. I must say I'm not into production, like I prefer DJing than production. Okay, I know that production is important and that I like it as well, it's nice. But obviously at that time I had the shop, I was DJing, I had a girlfriend, so I did not have a lot of time.
For production.
For production.
You were too busy DJing.
Exactly, more DJing than production. But then I started obviously with Frank and Edwin. I started a course with them on Ableton, and what was that? Reason as well. It was nice, that with the wires. Exactly, mela. It was a nice time, and we did something together as well. We used to do something as well. Before I did it with Duo Blanc, I used to do it with Jean-Claude. Do you remember Jean-Claude? He used to play with 909, 303, and I play with Dex together. It was something very, very, very good. And then we did it as well with Duo Blanc. I used to play with Frank's 909 as well. But that was it about productions.
All right. But the other productions that were not on vinyl were still released, obviously, digitally, I suppose.
Yes, of course. We still have it. We still have them.
All right. So that's, at least it's good to see that you also have production not only on the DJ side.
Exactly.
So I think it complements the whole thing. I think after DJing, you want to have, I suppose, a production as well. So. And Junior B?
Personally, first of all, I think Duo Blanc, it's good to say that Frank and Edwin, they were one of the first producers in Malta, and I think we must say, because I think it's a very important...
I think Owen as well, was it? Fine, Owen.
Yeah, so I think, because we as a DJs, then, let me talk about myself. When I was then experiencing these live performances by Edwin and Frank, it's really impressed me. I used to do some productions personally. I had one release back in 2004. I still do, but the thing is that back in 2008 I started suffering from tinnitus, and it was one of the main reasons I stopped performing on a professional way. And then my brother passed away back in 2009, and for 3 to 5 years I lost all my motivation to DJing or to do productions. So personally it was a very challenging period. So I lost a lot of motivation during this period. But then I started performing back again in 2012. I still do some productions personally, but nowadays, unfortunately, I don't have that time. I'm busy with parenthood, I'm busy with my profession, so, but I think...
but you still
yes,
do
I'm
something.
still in love. I still do when I have time, but unfortunately, I don't have enough time.
But you're back in the scene on a low...
Yes, I perform only in my events, which I organize. I organize a yearly event, which I will...
So it keeps you in touch as well?
Yeah, it keeps you in touch with the crowd and even myself, because I still feel that feeling to perform. So when I see the decks, I want to, like a child want to you know, to use his toys. But I prefer to perform once a year, and that's all. I'm not in the mood and to performing every weekend. But yes, even as regards productions, I have some softwares and I do experiment. It depends on my mood.
We're getting gold now.
Not all, but
Older, not old.
it depends on my mood. So
Makes a difference.
personally, I don't want commitments, to tell you the truth. If I want to perform next year,
You want to
perform,
have a
but no
freer
commitment.
schedule.
Yes, I don't want to have
What
schedules.
about you, Adrian? Are you still regularly active?
Before the COVID, obviously, yes, I was playing like small parties, 200, 300 people. They were good. I mean, I still love vinyl. I still buy vinyl as well. I still have my decks at home and even CDJs. But then, obviously, the pandemic came and now I stopped buying vinyls and I'm not playing at home. I play the drums as well, so I don't know why these last 2 years
So you started as a child with a snare drum. eh?
Yes, exactly. I was 5 years old with a snare drum. Now, during the pandemic, I started playing the drums again, and I don't know why. I'm listening to rock again. I love rock as well, you know.
But you're still
it
keeping
changed
yourself
me.
active
Yes,
in a different way,
definitely.
okay.
And when everything will be better, you know, I might do something, you know.
So that's
because a
still
lot
there,
of
it's
people
still
tell
there as
me,
well.
listen, do something, and I might do a small party, you know, like 200, 300 people.
All right. So you're basically on the same page as Junior
Exactly.
B.
But
Maybe
he
not
does-
once a year, but
Exactly. He does a big event, you know, like once a year.
waħda u tajba. ngħidu
Waħda u
bla
tajba,
bla.
eżatt.
All right. And Bryan, you had also stopped DJing clubs
It's been quite some.
and radio as well, eventually.
Yes, eventually, yes.
Are you perhaps interested or tempted in some way to perhaps start radio again? If not clubs, because you also suffered from tinnitus as well, so that doesn't help. But radio perhaps is a small step.
But as Bryan said, I don't want any commitments nowadays. I'm not getting old. I'm already old now. I mean, I don't have.
But you
any-
still listen to music.
Yes, definitely.
All right, that's important.
All day, even when I'm at work, I do listen to music, any kind of music. I mean, if it's good music, I listen. I mean, it can be rock.
But you also have other hobbies, so obviously they take
Yes.
up your time as well. Important. So.
And when you grow up, you tend to more do the things that you didn't do before.
All right, that you perhaps had to give up then to do more music, and now you have the time to reverse.
That's right.
Okay,
Because
I must say, I don't know if you have the same experience, but I used to be in clubs every weekend for all
Even,
these years,
yeah,
between
yes,
1995 and I don't know, till 2009. And then by time, I prefer nowadays to stay relaxed, watching a film rather than going in big crowds.
And me and Bryan, we have kids as well, so we have a lot of time with kids, you know.
Busy with parenthood.
Yeah, but check. Obviously, that takes priority. We're getting towards the end of the interview, but I wanted the comment from you guys about, again, we mentioned the aspects of promotion and radio at the beginning of this session. When you look at the scene now, I'm assuming you're still following up to some level or other what's going on. Do you see that there is enough coverage now or space given to electronic music on the radio, for example, now? I'm just going to do a quick plug here. Our friends here do One Clubbing regularly, so if you want to listen to electronic music, they do a weekly show on One. They contact him for more details.
It depends which style. I mean, as regards, you know, techno style or whatever it is, I think Kenneth's show is the only show that we have locally right
That is
now.
dedicated to electronic
To 100%.
music.
I don't think there's any other shows.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think so.
No, I know on my show I do, quick self-plug, sorry. I do cater for all styles. So there's electronic, there's everything in it.
But I must say, we have
folk
digital
singing.
radios nowadays. We have Pure Radio, for example. We have Pure Radio, which is
Yes,
a
yes,
digital
yes.
radio broadcasted locally, where there's various local DJs presenting their program and even foreigners. And I must say, there's even this page, Unmute. I was one of the co-founders with my friends, Adrian V, Mark Asa, René and Deikol, which supports even the local talents, both the veteran ones and even the
the emerging
new ones.
talents as
and the
well.
emerging talents. So I think nowadays the platforms are different. It's more based on like
Yes. So we're in the absence of, let's say, radio itself,
Yeah, there's
although
the
radio
social-
now is
yes,
switching to
yes.
other platforms, eventually
There's
the
other
FM will
platforms.
disappear and will be on internet or the AB
Exactly.
plus
So-
only. So those will disappear eventually. But I'd say it's a pity that there's not as much space still being given to electronic music
There are
on
a
the
lot
airwaves.
of commercial stuff right now on the radio.
Yes, it's switching to more
And
commercial.
even
It's true.
house, I listen a lot. But techno, I think, Ken, it's the only one.
as a traditional radio.
Exactly.
Because as
yeah.
you're saying, there's
As you're saying, no,
traditional
no.
ones.
Not
I mean, if you
digital
go on the
radio, no,
internet,
no,
then
no,
you can
no.
go.
Yeah, but we're talking
to any-
locally.
Exactly.
Digital local radios we have.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
the traditional one
Yes,
are only
yes.
the show that
Exactly.
can
Yes.
Tanzania.
So
I don't think it's an
something has to
issue
be done.
coming from the radio stations. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. But now it's more social media, you know.
Yes, I think even the fact that you have Spotify, YouTube, you
YouTube,
can
exactly.
create your own
exactly,
playlist. So it's a
exactly.
bit of a kick to
To be
radio
honest,
itself.
To be honest, I don't listen a lot of radio myself, even Spotify, YouTube, because I want to listen what I want to listen, you know.
But going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, when, let's say, Bryan started the show in 1991, if there was Spotify at the time and you were still trying to discover something, sometimes you need somebody to lead you.
Exactly.
And that's what radio is.
Exactly. Yes,
Because,
yes,
all right, you
definitely.
can have the algorithms suggesting like similar artists to what you've just listened to, but if you're discovering, I think sometimes it's nice to have somebody who knows it already, and you learn from it as well. You learn from it, I think.
To tell you the truth, personally, I miss, if you ask me, what do you miss mostly? Performing in club or doing a radio show? I prefer doing a radio show rather than perform nowadays in a club.
You can still do it.
Yes. I used to love broadcasting a lot. But I did 7 years with PBS and then another 3 years with XFM, a radio station that is still on. And there I miss radio broadcasting a lot, yeah? A lot. The fact that you're alone in a room. And I mean, you generate this atmosphere as you want to like, and promoting and talking about something, it's something that...
Promoting events as well.
Exactly. But I miss broadcasting a lot, yeah? A lot I miss.
And on another aspect, the aspect of promotion, looking at the scene now as it is, do you see that it's grown, or there is perhaps the number is not as much as it used to be back in the day, the number of promoters? Maybe it's less promoters doing bigger events now?
I think so, yes, I agree. I don't think it's the same. No, it's not the same.
And do you think the enthusiasm that there was back in the 90s is still?
I don't want to sound negative because I hate to be negative, but I think there's something missing nowadays.
The truth is,
I mean,
yes.
Before, even the way they used to do tickets, flyers, venues, it was something...
Decorations,
even the
party goers.
The party goers with the, you know...
They used to buy clothes for each and every
I
party.
think nowadays...
It was a dance culture.
And we used to go parties with just a shorts and the t-shirt, Depeche Mode t-shirt. I used to go. Nothing very now with you know, like 1,000 €1,000 clothes.
I think it's now even as music, it's more mainstream rather than underground.
But in a positive way.
There will still be the underground events, maybe on a smaller
There's still
scale.
on a smaller, definitely. But on a positive way, and then nowadays there's a good artist in Malta. I think there's We're seeing a lot of good producers producing
The
quality
level has
sounds.
definitely-
So
Have a lot of leaders by the pool, you know.
as
playing
regarding
house, you
events,
know, exactly.
So those smaller places have perhaps replaced the phenomenon of a festival.
we're still
I think.
experiencing festivals like Glitch Festival, for example.
But that's one of the few, I think.
I think the only one.
The only one,
The only
really.
one, in fact, nowadays.
You know, so exactly
Based
what I was
on
this is what I was
pure
getting
electronic
at.
music, I'm saying.
Before, if you had different promoters competing, so you had quite a number of festivals in on the calendar. Now you don't. Now you have maybe the one, maybe two, because there used to be the Lost and Found happening here as well.
But it's more
from
based
UK.
on
It's an
completely
imported.
different style.
It's an imported festival.
And summer days or what the hell it
Not,
is.
not
but-
really us. Not really ours.
Exactly, exactly.
At
I
the
mean,
time
it's
being,
more
there
mainstream.
were so many festivals with loads of good artists, international artists. So even the party goers had to choose, because to go to a party didn't cost you just a 10 euro.
No.
As I'm telling you, you had to buy the ticket, which was
Expensive.
it
for
was a
that
little
time.
bit expensive
that time.
for the local.
And the best thing was that sorry, Brian, that festivals were like, you know, if it's the main DJ, let's say trance, but we had other rooms, you know, like techno, garage, house, drum and bass. So it used to be, you know, like if you go to a festival, you can listen to everything, you know, and different rooms, different arenas.
Right. So, well, on that note, I'd say, I suppose we all agree that the promotion at the time was when the advent of promotion back in the 90s was very crucial to the growth of the electronic music scene, definitely. It helped not only bring us closer to international artists who came over, but it also helped, I think, the local artists to improve, because now they could see rather closely something to aspire to and to motivate them as well. Even the fact that, as you said, you played after Jeff Mills. For you, in your CV, that is, you know, quite something to. I'm sure you've all had all the.
I must say, during that time, even in Spazju, there were some bars hosting good quality local artists.
Yes, definitely.
Peppermint, Misfits.
Exactly.
Misfits,
No, that means
I
that the
mean-
level of the local talent
yes,
then obviously
yes.
rose. And I think if we said perhaps in a negative way that there are no big promoters except for maybe Glitch or, I don't know, somebody else.
And we had a proper techno club as well called Mirage. Every Friday, Saturday, and
Right.
Sunday,
Right.
only techno. And
So
it
in
wasn't part
the
it as
absence
well.
of this, what I was saying is perhaps we can conclude on that as well. In the absence of these places, these promoters, I think the upside is that at least we can look at the artists we have today and appreciate that the level of productions coming out of Malta now is at par
Yes,
with
yes.
the international scene.
Definitely, yes.
On a positive note, as you're saying, I think nowadays there's some kids, which even myself, I follow a lot. I mean, we're experiencing good local productions.
Yes,
yeah?
even me. I follow a lot, and they are
Yes,
very,
I
very.
know. I mean,
Unfortunately,
I try very hard to follow up, but there's so many.
So many. Thanks even to softwares, because nowadays it's much easier to have
Yes, but
a studio.
the
on your
software
computer.
alone doesn't make the track.
Yes, definitely.
So
But
there
back
has
in-
to be the creative streak.
Definitely. But back in the days, it was very expensive to have.
Yes, yes,
to buy
of
a
course.
soft synth rather to the hardware.
Yeah, of course. But even the fact that you see the type of productions that are now emerging from the younger generations as well, especially, is incredible when you compare, you know.
And
like-
some of them are signed
this
even on-
applies not only to electronic music, this applies to rock as well, and metal and whatever. So it's an improvement that was across the spectrum, which is so to speak.
Also, if you mention Duo Blanc, they've invested in hardware back then, and
now?
till today they're still investing in hardware. I mean, I remember them in the when I had my first show, 1992, playing their tracks on cassettes. it was it was the first for me it was the first local how do you say electronic producers.
There's nothing wrong using software. I mean,
no. I mean, but it was very expensive.
definitely.
Very expensive. It was
And it was nicer as well. I prefer those days, you know, experimenting.
I do remember in 1998 I bought this drum machine, classic drum machine, Roland TR-909, and I bought it from UK. It was really expensive. So, but
when it came out, it wasn't that expensive.
No.
but then by time, yes.
Even now, I think they are expensive.
I know we're all having fun going on and on, but time is pressing at the moment, and we're going to have to stop here. But first of all, I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us and sharing these experiences with us and with the people in the audience as well. This is definitely a sign that we're going to have to do a follow-up session, I suppose, in another series of oral history sessions in the future, and I'm sure we will be working on that soon. I'd like to thank everybody as well for being here tonight, and I'll remind you that Junior B will be performing a DJ set as soon as we finish this session. I'd like to thank Etienne Brincat and One Clubbing, because I borrowed their picture of Junior B for our slideshow, but Etienne Brincat for supplying me with a hell of a lot of flyers that we've been using throughout the series as well.
So we should thank also Black Box Pro for getting us the mixer.
Black Box for the mixer, obviously. And obviously Mark for being patient with us as well, behind the camera. And,
well done to you guys, because I think
Edwin, Frank, Owen.
it's a must that we record our history,
yes,
because there's a lot of things to say, and I think
don't worry, we'll be chasing you to do more.
I think it's a must.
We won't let you rest easy.
Because even the new generation, they ask a lot about the local.
And this is why we're doing this.
I mean, even personally, when I post some old photos or flyers, people start sending messages, and they ask a lot. They ask a lot. So, well done, and thank you guys.
Definitely. But thank you, and thank you. You can take your comfort break now, I suppose, and we'll be back for Junior B's DJ set.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.